And today I am pleased to welcome two friends to talk about their work with us. We have artists, Ekua Holmes, and a good friend of mine, Ash Center Democracy Visiting Fellow Chip. And I would like to also welcome to the Ash Center some friends of Ekua's and Chip's. So can we give them a round of applause for being here? So for a little bit of background, here at Ash, we've been filling the suite with new artwork. This is a renovated suite, and I remember reaching out to Chip to say, we really want to hire some local artists. And here at the Ash Center, we are about democracy. We're about promoting a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy. And so how best can we do that without showing folks what that means? And so we were very lucky that Chip referred us to Ekua, and we got this amazing work up here. And so we really want them to talk about your work, your activism, and I want to give a shout out to IRA, the Institutional Anti-Racism and Accountability Project, and they have worked closely with them to get this artwork up. So our colleague Allison at IRA says that she got to know Ekua's work through Chip, and you have many incredible networks and artists, and so we're really grateful for that. So we are proud to really prominently feature your work in an area where everyone else can see it. And I want to let everyone know our mission here at ASH is to develop ideas, foster practices for equal and inclusive, multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Chip.
I love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I have made it, you know what I mean? I'm not Chip Greenidge anymore, I'm just Chip. I'm like Prince and Madonna. So I feel really good about that status, so much. You know, I just want to thank just being here and just being part of the Ash family. I came here a couple years ago during COVID. I was in Georgia and I heard about this fantastic opportunity. And I said, wait, I get to come home. And I was trying to figure out a way to keep my institution affiliation of, you know, getting books and all these wonderful things. And I applied and I sat back and I got the letter. And it's just been a really great place for me to be able to put I do a lot of practice, but also to work with different people here in the academic and the other side, just to share different ideas and hear different ways and be able to use those tools to come out and get the community active and so forth. So I just want to give a big hug to Archon and the Ash family and Tim and everyone for always welcoming me. I just want to say that. Thank you, y'all. Now let's talk about Miss E.J. Ekua Holmes. All right. There's a traditional bio right here, which I'll give a few about it, a few pieces about it, but let me just go right into it. Ekua's work is collage-based, and her subjects cut from torn papers and investigate family histories, relationship dynamics, childhood impressions, the power of hope, faith, and self-determination. Remembering a Roxbury childhood of wonder and delight, she considers herself a part of the long line of Roxbury image makers. Now, let me tell you, she has gotten a lot of awards, she has gotten a lot of things, and I'm not sure if you guys know the last Kwanzaa stamp. This lady right here, all right? The National Kwanzaa stamp. Another thing as well is that I went to Google one day, maybe like, was that 7 years ago? 2015. And I went on there and I saw Ekua's work. Her work was featured for 24 hours on Google. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But let me tell you how I met her real quick, all right? It was 1997. And we were at the partnership on the Vineyard. There was an event there, and she was sitting next to the table with me, and I was starting my nonprofit called the National Black College Alliance. I was 27 years old. And I saw the amazing work that she did. And I said, well, would you consider working with a new nonprofit? And she said, sure. And so her life has been, it's been fantastic ever since. But originally, all my original designs for my nonprofit came from Ekua. And I just want to thank you for being a part of that journey of making art as activism, of being able to activate young minds and so forth. So thank you for that. So great. So what we're going to do first is we're going to have her do a presentation of some of her work, and then I'll get to sit here and make jokes and grill you and do all those other things. So I'm gonna get out the way, all right? You ready?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's slightly into the afternoon, and thank you so much for inviting me, Chip. It's a pleasure to be here. I have some slides to show you. There's probably too many to fit into the time that we had, and I'm really interested in your questions and observations and Chip's. But I'm a Roxbury girl, so I have not strayed far from my roots. I live about 5 minutes from where I grew up, and I always say that I've received all of my inspiration from the Roxbury community. So let me start my little slideshow here. Okay. So inspiration is everything. It's the reason I get up in the morning, because I'm inspired to do more art, to engage with young people, and to practice art as a form of activism. My first job was making flyers for an organization that was putting together a march. A black woman had been violated, and the police department wasn't doing anything about it, and they wanted to assemble a march, and they wanted to have a flyer made. And by going through that process, I understood how powerful art could be in inspiring people, in rallying people to action. And I never got over that. That was sort of, even though I was interested in art and I was doing my little drawings and things like that, having that experience really started me on the path to using my art for things like Chip's new nonprofit. That was exciting to me, to be working with a young black man who was starting something, who had grand ideas, and that we could develop some imagery that could travel along with his ideas and be a beacon for people to look at. Don't know what the next slide is. So I also am a children's book illustrator, and I am able to pull upon my Roxbury background as a child to infuse those books with sometimes a childlike viewpoint, or things that we as adults have forgotten what it's like when you're a kid. And so I call Roxbury, Mass. my green streets. I was never discouraged from being an artist, and I have met many parents who are fearful when their children want to be artists, and I'm able to tell them, hey, it is possible. Not only is it possible, but enjoy. Your child will succeed. If you squash that part of them that their soul is really, calling out for, that would be damaging. My cousin and I did this book called Green Streets, and I'm happy to say that it's being used in communities all across the nation to help kids tap into what's special about their neighborhoods and who's inspiring them in their neighborhood. Sometimes we take those things for granted. When I was a young girl, in our house, we did not have a budget for artwork. So we had church bands, and we had gas station calendars, but no real black imagery. But one of my friend's mother, Sarah Ann Shaw, she collected Roxbury artists. And so when I would go to visit Claire, there would be these paintings and lithographs on the wall, and I would just stare at them. Not just because they were works of fine art, but because they were of children. And most art that I saw back then, it was ships and men on horses and things that I found kind of boring, to be honest with you. But this Street Children by John Wilson, I used to stare at this piece because these were like me and my friends. Back then there were no computers and joysticks and all that kind of stuff. So you would just assemble outside as kids and figure out what you were gonna play. Sometimes you're gonna make paper boats and float them down water on the street. Other times you're gonna do Mother May I, or, the games. Somebody name a game from back then.
Foursquare.
Hopscotch, Foursquare. What's the other one? Dodgeball. Anyway.
You can do all that on your phone now.
Not the real thing. So I decided then that I wanted to focus on children, because I felt like my childhood was magical, and I had so much fun with my friends, and I wanted to hold on to that. So this is one of the first pieces that I did called Golden. And jumping rope. How could we forget how important jumping rope was? This little girl, I just call it Girl in Literature, and I did it in honor of my Aunt Barbara. She was a librarian, a rare black librarian in the 70s. She actually started the program for Boston public school librarians. And back then, the third grade readers, they all had white children. There were no black children. So I did want to acknowledge that. But I found so much joy in books, and it's actually where I saw my first works of art, where I could see that some people use pen and ink, some people use pencils, some people use acrylic, and I was fascinated by that. And then someone sent me this picture of this other little girl. I love it when people send me pictures that my pictures have inspired, so that she sent me this of her granddaughter looking at one of the books that I illustrated. Another parent sent me this photograph because it looked like their son had just rode his bike right out of this image. So I take a lot of inspiration from my environment. And these are scenes that we walk by every day, and we don't realize how magical they are. Until an artist takes them and shines a light on it and adds color and depth and meaning. These are some sketches from one of the children's books. I work a lot on tissue paper so that I can move things around and try things out. But this was the first children's book that I illustrated. I'm going to watch my time. We talk about careers. I think we were talking about, your apprenticeship program and getting kids interested in things. When I went to college, I thought maybe I'd like to be a children's book illustrator, but then I took a couple of classes and I thought, I'm terrible at this. I'll never be able to do all this drawing and all this measuring and all that. So I gave it up, and I matriculated with a different major. But then years later, I had my work up in an ice cream store, J.P. Licks, and somebody saw that I was a children's book illustrator, even though I wasn't a traditional one. So this was my first book. I wasn't sure that I wanted to do it, but when they sent the manuscript and it was about Fannie Lou Hamer, I knew I had to try, right? So I think I'm gonna go in and they're gonna give me a list of the illustrations they want. And instead they say, oh no, what illustrations do you wanna do? You're a partner in this, you're 100% partner in this enterprise. And part of me was like, oh great, I get to do what I want. And the other part of me was like, oh, I get to do what I want. It's a lot more work when you're responsible for it. What color dress is she wearing? What is the setting? What's the perspective? But as you can see, the book went on to win several awards, and I've been working with the author, Carol Boston Weatherford, over the years. This was the opening piece from the biography. And the interesting thing about the biographies that we do of unsung heroes is that oftentimes there aren't any photographs of them as children, because they were in situations where they couldn't afford children, or they were children before photography became a thing. So you have to try to imagine, what does this Fannie Lou Hamer look like at 6 or 7? What is she embodying as a child? Because when you look at pictures of yourself as a child, you're Lamerchi, right? You have the same qualities that you have now, you had them when you were young. So that was an interesting challenge of stories like this. And then Fannie Lou Hamer had 19 brothers and sisters. And they all went into the cotton field every morning with their mother and father and picked cotton from can, seed to can. And just trying to have a kind of empathy and connection with her, I thought about my grandparents in Arkansas. Because as an illustrator and as an artist, you're always looking for, okay, how can I really saturate myself with this idea so that I can give it life? And I thought about my grandparents who lived maybe 200 miles away in Arkansas, and I realized that they had lived this. They had lived through Jim Crow. And so that gave me the inspiration that I needed to finish this book. This book also led me to the Sunflower Project, because as I was reading about Fannie Lou Hamer, and I know this is all over the place, but there really is a circle here. She lived in a place called Sunflower County, Mississippi. And I thought, my God, I love sunflowers. And I thought of her picking that cotton, having her feet wrapped in fabric without shoes, but that she would be surrounded by the divinity of sunflowers, and that was God's presence in their lives, something to look at and hope for. So my granddaughter and I embarked upon checking out these 2-acre sunflower fields, and that's my granddaughter's song. We loved those sunflowers, and we thought, well, why can't we have this in Roxbury or Dorchester? Why can't I turn a corner off of Blue Hill Avenue and see a field of sunflowers to brighten my day, to lift my spirit? So this was the lot that we had in mind. This is at the corner of, I know some of you know Freedom House in Roxbury. This is at the corner right across the street from Freedom House. And every year it would fill up with trash, weeds, and it was just such a big insult to people standing there at the bus stop. And I thought, this is the lot. What if we could turn that into that? And so fortunately, I was able to get a grant. This is a different site. This is on Townsend Street in Roxbury, but every year we give out 10,000 sunflower seeds so people can grow their own, and we also do some sites around the city. We've done Rose Kennedy Greenway, we've done the Museum of Fine Arts, we do this Townsend Street site, we do Grove Hall, and one of the main goals is to get children, you know, some kids have never grown anything, don't even know where their food comes from. So to get kids involved in growing, planting, harvesting. This was during COVID, and we had this beautiful sunflower field. So we did like a cut your own sunflower pop-up, and people came and cut these gigantic sunflowers down and took them home. So the themes of the Roxbury Sunflower Project are here. Planting seeds, so think about this not just in the literal sense of planting sunflower seeds, but what kind of seeds are we planting as human beings? Because we all are seeds. I know you've heard that quote, you know, they scattered us, but they forgot that we were seeds. They didn't realize we were seeds. So even in our scattered state, we are still loving, we're still teaching, we're still learning, we're still doing all these things. Deep roots, the sunflower can grow a 50-foot taproot to look for water to survive. And I feel like my roots are very deep in Roxbury, and that's what sustains me. The heliotropism is following the sun. So in an adolescent stage, the sunflower tracks the sun from the east, and the head turns all day and follows the sun so we can get the most light and the most nourishment. And then at night, it resets to the east. Radiance, pretty straightforward. When I look out of this room, that's what I see, radiance. Martin, she used to be on the front desk there. She knew everything about the neighborhood. And I love this picture because it shows her basically growing out of the ground, and she is her own sunflower. And then here are some of the flowers that grew in that same spot. This is London Parker McWhorter, who's a partner at United Neighbors of Lower Roxbury Garden. They also have a sunflower garden now, and we collaborated on the MFA project and the Rose Kennedy Greenway. And here's his mom, Lolita, Kate Gilbert from Now and There, formerly Now and There, and Jacqueline Johnson. We worked with this teen group. They planted with us on Townsend Street. And there's my son. He's always the guru of growing. And I just loved when I found out that they used the sunflower as a symbol for George Floyd. It sort of made me realize that sometimes impulses come up in a community and you don't know exactly where it came from. Maybe it came from one place for you and another place for you, but somehow we're all looking at sunflowers right now as an important symbol. So those are some of the ways that I see arts as a form of activism. I'm sure Chip's gonna bring up some other ones, but I'll stop there for now. And thank you so much.
Give it up, y'all. This is so fun to like sit home and kind of do this in many different functions. Our place Grill 110 Grill. We always see each other and all that
I
stuff.
told you, we always set up the camera.
But I just want to bring up a couple of things. I think the first thing is, let's talk about who were your role models growing up in this kind of work in Roxbury. I know you lived were in the piano factory for a while, and I know the artists, as we guys know, at Northeastern and all those other pieces. Can you talk about that kind of community and how that's helped you?
I mean, going back to my childhood again, I was a student of Elmer Lewis. Raise your hand if you know that name. Okay, that's not enough people. So I am really dedicated to making sure that generations coming forward understand why the city of Boston is the way that it is and what she did to make it this way. Elmer Lewis was the child of Garveyites. She came here from Barbados. And she was just a gifted human being. She had lots of different skills, but she went to Emerson and she studied the education of gifted children. Now, you might ask yourself back in the 40s, why would she want to teach gifted children? But that's how she saw Black children. And she might have been the only one that did, because when I was going to Boston Public Schools, I definitely was not considered talented or gifted. She went on to open her own dance school in her living room and taught generations of people, not just dance, but how to see themselves as beautiful, capable, startlingly, just, I don't even know how to express it all, but I was a shy girl in her class.
It's like, I try to explain your work. You use textiles and all these, can you explain that to everybody and how you look at something and you see something different? Like, I'm like, oh, that's just some, But how did that like come together? Do you understand what I'm talking about? Like, you see different things and you're able to put it down on a piece of paper. You're experimenting and so forth.
Well, I think my main medium is cut and torn paper, as we said earlier, but sometimes fabric, sometimes objects. And maybe what you're saying is I might look at a photograph, but I see planes. Or I might look at something and just see patches of color where somebody else just sees some trees. And I think that's how all artists are working. We're interpreting what we see or what we hear. Even a vocalist can take a song that was sung by Cole Porter and bring something completely different to it. Just recently, Roberta Flack passed away. May she rest in glory. And her song, Killing Me Softly, was recorded by someone else. And their version was good, but hers was transformative. So I think it's just how we look at things, and that we have this calling to be visual artists, to do what you do, convening and mentoring. These are callings on our lives, and you know if you have one because you feel it in there. And when you get up every morning, you're looking for a way to make that even bigger and better.
I have a sociologist I studied. His name is Stuart Hall. You guys can look him up. And I just couldn't believe how he took images and talked about coding and decoding as a way to look at how we, how we look at a stop sign. We actually know what red means and all that, and how our bodies are accustomed to that. And so it's interesting when you see pictures like these, is that there's certain codes that we automatically see and so forth. And for you to be able to pick up and say that sunflower, that just gave you another code that you explained to all of us of how you look at the sunflower and what kind of healing and all of this thing. Another piece too is that many people think your artistry is just on this or on this, but you just showed us in the community how you're able to envision a vacant vibe and saying, this is what I want to give to people. Let's talk about, you just said something earlier to me and LaChaun to talk about, when you're all this creative in the community, what does your house look like?
Can I say that?
All right. What does your house look like a museum? You talked about and you just told me something about your kitchen. I'm getting personal, so we'll get family.
I'll tell you this, I'm gonna shift it a little bit because I just went to the John Wilson show at the Museum of Fine Arts. And the curators there were able to create an exhibition that felt like when I walk into his house. His artwork is everywhere in his house, and it's very embracing. And they were able to take that energy and bring it into a museum space, from the color of the wall to the way there's small little intimate areas, and that's how I felt. So, no, my house doesn't look like a museum. As a matter of fact, it's more like this along the bottom here in my studio.
Yep.
I have piles and piles of paper and fabric and books and articles and all of that.
So you see that, like a whole bunch of that just sitting on the corner, everyone like, that's trash.
Not just on the corner, but just like everywhere. But it's comforting to me. Those things, when I pick up a piece of paper, maybe from 1977, it brings back energy and memories for me. And maybe now is the time that that's going to show up in a collage. So I just keep things. Yeah, but I do have some nice areas in my house.
Another thing is that when I met your son. Your son was one of my first employees. One of the most creative guys I ever met in my life. He knows how to think things and put things together really fast. Let's talk about your son and his daughter. I'm like another son of yours and so forth. But just talk about their creativity journey. And how you shaped it or didn't shape it, or how do you just an open conversation
That's
about,
such
because
a-
I know here people, we got
Yeah, this-
beautiful cousins and nieces and kids. And how did you, I don't know when you're growing up, was it stunted or was it started or what? You're just scribbling on a piece of paper. You ain't got no talent. I mean, you know what I mean? So how do you?
I never heard that, and I'm thankful for that. I never heard that, but I do remember my aunts telling my mother not to buy me certain things because she's not gonna stick with that. And my mother just ignored them and did what she did. With my son, you know, I tried to, he's multi-talented, as you say, so when he wanted to do music, he got a keyboard, you know, he got lessons. When he wanted to do something else, he got that as well. Because to me, even if you don't end up doing that thing informs the next thing that you do. I studied photography, and though I don't do it as a practice now, what I learned about composition and shadow and light and all of those things play a part in the collages that I make. So there's no loss. If you read a book and you don't understand it, there's a book that I read years ago and I was like, what is this? And then I read it again 15 years later and I was like, oh my God.
So just want to let you know we need to do some code language, what that
Yes,
means.
exactly.
All right.
They were a big company back then in, you know, communications design and all that kind of stuff. But I forgot your question now.
Okay. About Meredith and working with interns.
Okay, so
and-
when I left there, I started my own small little graphic design firm, and I had clients like Chip, The Partnership, Barbara Edelin, who did a lot of events around town. So I did a lot of events for nonprofit, the invitations, the program book, and all of that kind of stuff. But Chip, you know, he's a big personality.
No, not
And
me.
he would come in basically and set up shop in my shop. You know, he'd take a desk and he'd be there all day making phone calls and doing this and that. So when I had my assistants, I would say, if you want to know how to deal with a real client, you're going to deal with Chip because when he changes it for the 10th time, you're still going to be smiling and saying, okay, well, let's try that instead of like, so it was a small shop and I loved having you there as a son
Yeah.
because I knew that I could support you in the ways that I could support you, and at the same time, you're supporting me as a creative.
And one time she got mad at me, and you know what she told me one day? And she said, you know what, I want you to go ahead and do this. You have the eye, you have the creativity.
Sure did.
And then I started doing my own flyers, and she gave me the push, like the mom, you know, she was working on another project. I said, no, I come first. And then she's like, no, you don't. But she gave me the day.
Yeah,
She pushed me and said, hey,
He
you
had
got
that
the
eye.
eye for this. I want you to go ahead and try.
Yeah,
And I did.
And you did.
And I thank you for that.
yeah. And nowadays, everybody's doing their own graphic design on the computer, so you got a chance to do it
Right,
earlier.
earlier, and so
Absolutely.
forth, so
Yeah,
forth.
yeah.
And another thing I wanted to bring up is that I remember in 2005, you got up and said, you know what, I'm going back to school in Maryland.
Mhm.
You picked up and left.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that process? I'm getting a little personal here, but
I
for
know.
you as, but that was like real big for you and also just where we're at today,
Yeah.
for you to just go ahead and say, I'm gonna do this to get
You know,
done.
they say, you know, you don't want to regret the things that you don't do. It's almost more painful than regretting some of the things that you did, because you survived those things, but the thing that you didn't do, you could never know what the outcome would have been. And I wanted to have uninterrupted time to be an artist, and what happened in the graphic design business is I was always busy.
That's right.
One summer, all of my clients were leaving to go to Martha's Vineyard. And I was stuck in a hot studio working on their jobs. And I didn't get a vacation.
Yeah.
And I said, something's wrong with this picture. Like, I need to have a vacation. I need to have time to do my work. And so the way to do it was just sort of cut bait and get out of town. And that's why I went back to school.
And you went for what, to let everybody know?
I went
Degree?
to Maryland Institute College of Art for
Yeah.
interdisciplinary arts.
Yeah. And what year was that? Was it like
I think I
2005,
was looking
6?
at the bill just recently. 2006, I
Yeah,
think it was. Yeah.
So I thought that was very
That was
empowering.
quite an experience too.
Definitely.
Moving to a different city after being in Boston my entire life. I was so homesick, y'all. I really was.
Well, tell the work where you're at now and what you're
So
doing.
I worked for Mass College of Art, which is where I got my BA in 1977. And now I run a program called Spark the Artmobile, which is a mobile arts program that Mass Art has, We go into the neighborhoods of Boston and we bring art and design experiences there. We have visiting artists that come out and do things with us. We've done poetry weekends, we do paint nights, we do collaborative painting, and we basically work in collaboration with people who are already on the ground doing great stuff, but who could use an infusion of art and design to help catalyze their message, or get more teens in, get more seniors in. There's a big push right now to work with the senior community because senior isolation is a big issue. So I've been going to some workshops around that. But I love my job because I get to work with students at Massart, and I get to work with kids in the community as well as elders who have great stories to tell and share, and great creativity that many of them put on the back burner because it wasn't a popular field in their era, or they were raising kids and things like that. And we give them the opportunity to come back. All of our programs are free. We provide everything, and we're in the encouragement business, you know. And also we're looking for tomorrow's creatives whose parents may need it's gonna be okay, let them follow that, you know. We want them to have faces at Massart that when they come over, they say, oh, I know her, or I talked to her before, or a place to go at Massart where they know they're gonna be warmly received. So it's a great gig, and I hope that the project will continue after I'm gone.
Can you tell us about the 2 pieces that are here at the Ash space? And then we'll...
It's actually 3.
Okay, 3.
I didn't see this one here.
Oh, wow, 3. Well, she said 3, right? Yeah. It was funny. I'm going to tell you, Tim, LaChaun, all of them will be, when this place opened up, it was all white space. And so they would walk around and like,
Something needs to
think about like where to put things. It was the most beautiful thing to see for them to really think about it. And so, you want to talk about the 3 pieces?
Well, I don't know if people can see them. This one here is called Tree of Wisdom. And as I was saying, I do a lot of children's book illustration. And this is just, you know, that's something that I would do as a kid, is sit outside and read a book. And inside of the tree, you'll see like the faces of ancestors and things like that, because they're coming up out of the ground and they're sort of nurturing her as she takes her exploration into whatever book that is that she's reading. And the one that I think is closest to us we looked at on screen, it's called Precarious. And you probably can't see from here, but there's a big stack of books, which is something that we used to do when we went to the library. We get like as many books as we could carry.
Yes.
But the top couple of books look like they might topple over. And I think about this young black man in a precarious situation that he might find himself in as a young black man in America, and how knowledge and reading can be a part of stabilizing his experiences.
And there's one more?
Yeah, but they can't see that one.
But if you just tell them, they can go out.
So the first
All right.
one down there is called May We Forever Stand, which is a line from the Negro National Anthem. And it was a commission for the Washington Post when the new Museum of African American History and what's it called, Merchie?
The Museum of African American
History and Art and Culture. History and Culture. Okay. So they did this an article. They did a whole booklet about it, and they commissioned me to do that piece, and that was the centerfold in the magazine. So it's called May We Forever Stand, which, you know, whenever I'm singing that song, when I get to that line, I always feel, I do cry. I cry every time I sing that song, because it's very prescient of where we are right now even, and maybe where we'll be for a little while longer, but we keep trotting that road. So.
Any thoughts where we are today in the world?
Oh, good Lord.
And then we're going to take it up for questions.
Let's go to questions.
All right. I just want to say it's just so glad to see so much family in the room. You know, I put out a small list out and said, you know, let me just make sure. And I hope I know you didn't expect to see all these
I
people
really
here.
feel it, especially, you know, familiar faces and friends, and it's good to see folks.
So great to have Lamerchi here,
Yeah.
Fraser. I work with her on the Reparations Task Force, and so glad to be here. Also, I see a student of mine from when she was 13.
Oh my.
She walked into the room. She was, I can't believe that as well. And also, I see my tag team. Is Tova, is that you, Tova?
Yes.
All right, my tag team partner here as well, and so forth. And many others. And also, there are 2 brothers I met yesterday. I was at Slade's, and we were doing karaoke, having a good time. And a bunch of college students ran in the door, and you know, I'm like, wow, what's going on here? These two right here. All right, and I said, where you guys go to school? And they said, Harvard. And I said, I got a beautiful place for you to come today. So I love for them just to say hello and just say who they are, say who you are, and what year you are, and so forth.
How's it going, everyone? I'm Daniel Faladay. I'm a student, and I'm studying economics and computer science.
Fantastic.
How you doing? I'm Cameron Henry. I'm a junior here studying sociology and economics.
Nice.
So we welcome you. This is home. And you guys know Frank. Frank runs a tight ship and set up, and they came in and they said, wait up, we want to play. And so I whispered to Frank, and yesterday these two, as you know, our Harvard students are very, very multi-talented. They got up there and sang and performed as well. So maybe at the end of this, we'll get a little performance as well. So she has a hard stop. She has a bunch of students she promised to do, and I just want to thank you for rearranging your schedule. When we sat here together with Christine, all of us sat there and said, we're going to do this, and I called, she was like, all right, Chip, you lucky to you. I don't want it. So please, questions, we got a few minutes, go for it.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Deandra Williams. I'm with the Boston Public Library. And first and foremost, thank you so much for being here. Chip, thank you for bringing her here to, like, for me, this is a big deal. As a daughter of Roxbury,
Yes.
and just like in this space of building community engagement. So, and congratulations. Way before this whole thing happened. So this is a big deal for me to be in your presence as well on everything. But one of the questions I have, two questions. I'm raising a creative myself. She's very creative. Since she was 2, like she'll go into my recycle bin and pull out things and do like mixed media art. Like she made this Easter basket. Like I have pictures of it, so it's insane. But how do you how do you continue to promote those curious minds? And I'm very, like, I'm a neat freak, so it's very hard for me to walk into a room. Because I know that there's side of her brain is going, like, from Legos on the floor, like, you name it. So, like, it's hard for me to walk into her room. So how do you continue to nurture those creative minds, and then what are some opportunities for her? So that's like that's my parent question. And then on like from an organizational perspective, how can we as organizations continue to think about how do we create spaces just not for conversation, but around engagement and involvement with the art? For the library this year, our theme is revolutionary art. So it's a part of our 3-part. So that's me saying I want you to come to the library.
What library? What library are you at?
So I work.
Are you at the Roxbury Library?
So I work at a central, but like
Okay.
for my position, like working with the different branches, but also central branch to curate amazing programs. So again, I really want you to come to the library. But like, how do you kind of continue to create spaces not only to talk about art, but also think about different ways that we can employ art as we think about some of the work that we're doing and how that connects with not just activism, but kind of, you know, it's a loaded question, but like decoding and think about what that means and how we interact with folks. So
Well, let me start with your first question about your daughter. She has her own room. Let it be that.
Okay.
Because my mother was also a neat freak. And I had spaces in the house that were my spaces that she allowed me to collect junk off the street and bring it home, and rocks and feathers and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know how she did it, because she was a very prim and proper lady, very neat, but somehow she was designated to be my mom, and she knew what her gig was, to make sure that I had the balance. I tell people, you know, the reason that my taxes are done on time is because my mother was an accountant. I didn't get those genes, but I did get the understanding that if I wanted to be successful in anything, I had to take care of business too. So I would say allow that to be her room. And maybe when it's time to clean up a bit, because I have to clean my studio sometimes, I can't function in there, maybe that could be something you could do together. And while you're helping her put things back, she can talk to you about what she's trying to accomplish as an artist. The other thing I would say, I've seen parents do this, they see that their child has talent, and now they're trying to push that talent. Give her space to figure out where her talent's gonna take her. You're the shepherd, you know? So you're just making opportunities for her and space for her, but don't try to control it, you know? So you might have to go gorilla. Okay? I mean, sometimes we have to go gorilla. Mass art has its, you know, its formal communication design, but I have mine.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes it's easier to ask for
I know they
forgiveness.
like try to sneak police and there's ways you can get around.
And you, knowing you always do that. So I already know who you are. We have a mother-daughter team right here, so I'm looking at them as she was talking right here.
Yeah.
You know I put you on the spot.
You did.
You know,
Okay, but
you can react.
artists are all the creatives here. We come to the art to produce a vision. And sometimes it takes a lot of things to make that vision come forward. And there is order in the chaos, whether you believe it or not.
Amen.
And so,
She's preaching
in
now.
the relationship to people who see symmetrically things that may be ace deuce, my daughters rest in the space of very, very immaculately kept space.
She's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
For me.
I work with her.
You did it.
Accepted prayers.
I mean, her, and that is where her creativity lives.
Right.
And it's beautiful.
Yes.
But I can't live her life.
Okay.
All right.
So, well, to add to that, what is beautiful about our relationship is that now, as an adult that has her own space, and no longer has to deal with navigating a space that is different, right? Because in the collection, she sees promise, and I do not. But having my own space, we have developed a relationship around how can my square angles help to promote her art. So we now work on a project. I'm the project manager, and I work on her project that is commissioned by the city of Boston to put a 14-foot sculpture on the outside of the fire department on Columbus Ave. On Columbus Ave. And it takes the village. So our team is supporting her creativity, preserving her right to radicalism, and to preserve community. So we have come to a space in which we both can exist and have a place to elevate her art. But I do appreciate being given the space to be a creative of my own in whatever way it shows up in my life and in society, and also giving that to my son, who is a rising whatever entrepreneur and rapper and this and that. And it is just as Ekua mentioned, giving them the space and the encouragement to go down whatever path for however long it takes.
Yeah, I agree with that. And developing trust. That trusting each other in those spaces, I think, is the most important element. And I think Ekua has given such a rise and to this conversation about navigating worlds and spaces and giving each other our just due of trusting that it's going to be okay.
Yes, indeed.
One thing is that she has a meeting with her students at 1:20, 1:15. So I just got one more thing to do, and I know we want a picture.
Yes.
She doesn't know I'm doing this. Is that I have a old design that we did in 2000. Do you remember this?
Vaguely.
The one of the 9,000. But you can remember. You can remember. I know you remember doing that.
I do. I
But-
remember that font.
Yes. So that is a present. Oh my God. And also I'm giving you a official greatest smile. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much. This was enjoyable. It was more like a fireside chat without the fire. But,
Oh, you brought the flames.
please know that Spark the Artmobile is available to collaborate with community organizations. There's nothing we won't try. And the great thing about we're small and mighty and we can pivot. When COVID came, we moved all of our stuff into the virtual world.
That's right.
And we learned as we went. We had phones on things and, we were doing all that background stuff, but in the front it looked seamless. So, there's a lot that each of us can do to make this a better world. And just in terms of you asking me about these times, that's the most important thing for us to remember. We still have agency. We still have goals. We still have possibilities, and to never let anyone make us forget that. So,
Thank you. One thing that I did not mention is her work with the Boston City Art Commission and how she fostered and aided the work to be much more diverse in the city of Boston. She served on that commission and made sure there was something that artists were able to express in the city who had not been recognized before. So I just wanted to commend her. And she might be one of the reasons I got
And NAACP
Yes.
Image Award, almost, right? But you got recommended and all that.
Yeah.
But in a closing as well, is that there's a Harvard Hutchinson Center has a museum that's free. That's a block away, and I want you to see that. Is that Sarah? Are you here?
I'm here.
Oh my God! Also, we have the